can say definitively that religions are all bullshit.
Welcome to Brainstorm.
We have the explicit tag for a reason.
This is a base level argument to a higher level morality.
I get paid to science?
Two science as much as one can science.
What the hell was my point?
Trigger warning. The Brainstorm podcast will criticize your most cherished beliefs. We attack nonsense in all its forms and discuss difficult subjects. If you peddle pseudoscience, supernatural woo, or religious dogma, then this is not your safe place. This is the home of hardcore skepticism.
Hi, and welcome to the Brainstorm podcast Skeptic Studio, where we do interviews, major topics, and news related to skepticism and atheism. We broadcast live every second Friday at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, not Central Daylight Time, on Spreaker.com. I'm Corey, and my panel tonight are Destin.
Hey.
Angela.
Hello.
Lisa.
So excited.
Renee.
Hello.
And the always amazing Dave doing sound.
I'm excited.
You and me both, buddy.
We're here in Roman Empire Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan, and today is May 12th, 2017. Our guest this week is Dr. Amy Tuteur. I hope I said that right.
Yes.
A.K.A. the Skeptical OB. She is an obstetrician, gynecologist, author, blogger, and well-known writer for many major news outlets. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I guess just a good place to start is how did you get into mixing your profession with skepticism?
Well, I started a long time ago. I've actually been on the internet before there was a World Wide Web. So that's a long time. I first was online in 1994, and I started working with a group called Moms Online, and I did a message board for them called Ask the OBGYN. And that was the first time I really heard a lot about home birth. That's not something you see in Boston, which is where I'm from. And over the years, I did a number of other internet ventures until I finally decided I wanted to start something of my own. And I started off with a blog called Home Birth Debate, just to discuss the issues around home birth. And I quickly realized that it was just a small subset of all the quackery out there. And ultimately, I transitioned the name to the Skeptical OB. And since then, I've been talking about not just home birth, but natural childbirth and breastfeeding, attachment parenting, vaccination, basically all the issues of early childhood. And I've been kind of disappointed to find how much pseudoscience is passed around in the guise of parenting advice.
Do you think it's getting worse?
It's definitely getting worse, no question.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I think it actually ties in with the general disparagement of expertise.
Yeah.
It's not restricted to medicine, but it certainly has hit medicine very hard.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very true.
And you can find just about anything on the internet.
Yeah. So
yes.
Yeah.
So it's empowered people who would otherwise be considered fringe, and it's allowed them to create basically an alternate reality in which everybody reinforces everybody else in believing things that aren't true.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's dive right in on Kelly Brogan then.
Wait, no, before we dive in, can I do a little bit of just, I want to tell you, Amy, how much I love your website. I discovered it when I was pregnant 6 years ago, and it was such a breath of fresh air. I was doing a PhD in science at the time, and I found it so hard to find any good information. So my only source of information by the end was just like journal articles and your blog. That was it. And really, really admire the work you're doing. Sorry, that's my little plug.
Yeah,
there.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is one of the things that people don't see. The part of the value of the blog is the entertainment value when people parachute in and yell at me and tell me how horrible I am. Somebody even made a video in which they used a Disney movie and replaced the wicked stepmother's face with mine.
No way. They went to all that effort?
All that trouble. There's
Esmeralda? Is that her name?
I don't know which one, but it really must have taken a lot of effort. But what people don't see is I get a ton of private feedback through email messages and Facebook messages of people saying, you really spoke to the things I was worried about.
Oh, it's just excellent to have good information. That's something you can rely on. It's invaluable for sure.
Something that's evidence-based.
Yeah, and it's just rational and not... Yeah.
I didn't know that your blog existed back when I was pregnant. So I struggled because there was a lot of woo out there regarding pregnancy and stuff like that. And I think I bought one book, and it was really hard not to buy into all of the bullshit out there.
Yeah.
It's just insane. It's just insane.
Well, even just the amount of guilt you're made to feel as a woman to say that you should feel pain during labor and delivery because that's the proper way to give birth. Somehow you're more of a woman for doing, I don't know. We don't have the same attitude about dentistry, but somehow
we don't have the same attitude about men.
No, exactly.
That's really the difference.
Yeah.
That's right.
In the years that I've been doing this, my thinking has really evolved. Originally, I thought this was all about science and people who didn't understand science. And yes, it is true that a lot of people dabbling in these things do not understand science or statistics. But then I sort of expanded my worldview to encompass the fact that these things are actually businesses and people are marketing them. It's very fashionable to say that medicine is a business, but alternative health is a big business. It's a $40 billion business in the United States. Oh. And they have a very low cost margin because everything is baloney, and so it costs them nothing to make it up.
They're completely unregulated, right? They're not part of professional organizations. They have no ethical standards.
Right, but they do have some good marketing instincts. So I expanded to talking about how people need to quack-proof themselves from this marketing. Mm-hmm. But over time, I went to another level, which is that I've come to the conclusion that this is really about women and what we think women's proper role is in the world. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, in the last century, one of the greatest advances was the emancipation of women. In some countries, in some parts of the world, but still it hadn't been seen before. And for the first time, women were judged by something other than the function of their reproductive organs. Mm-hmm. And any major change is likely to produce a backlash. And this has produced a backlash that we're living through, and I think we don't recognize it because of that. But on the right, the backlash has been the rise of fundamentalism, which forces women back into the home. And on the left, there's been this rise of natural parenting, which is really natural mothering, and has the end result of forcing women back into the home.
Right.
Totally.
And so that, I encourage people to think about, what does it mean when you say women are empowered by pain? It really means something terrible. That your pain doesn't count. And we know from medical studies that women's pain isn't taken seriously. Mm. And I think the natural childbirth movement is really the ultimate reflection of that.
Absolutely.
I've personally had a slightly different experience than that when I shelled out almost $1,000 for a doula. And she was a trained hypnobirthing instructor. how familiar are you with hypnobirthing?
Oh, very, very familiar.
Got the CD and everything, the book, all that stuff. But one of the things that was to be avoided was mentioning the word pain. That was something that we didn't talk about because you weren't supposed to focus on that.
It's very Orwellian.
Pretending that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, it really is Orwellian.
Yeah.
Ignorance is knowledge, and war is peace, and peace is war. And, as if, I mean, it speaks to the issue. I think with all of alternative health, but particularly natural childbirth and natural parenting, it really operates on the Tinkerbell theory. That, I don't know if you remember in Peter Pan, one of the things is that no one can fly unless they believe they can fly.
That's right.
So in natural childbirth, no one can have a fantastic labor, painless, unless she believes that she can.
Yeah.
As if that even matters. I mean,
the magic power of belief.
It's all in your head, man. It's all in your head.
Yeah. Well, it's magical thinking. It's like knocking on wood.
Yeah.
My thoughts have the power to control what happens.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I think these practices also prey on a new mother's kind of natural insecurity about what she's doing. I mean, that's largely how
sure.
There was a lot of. I mean, I had friends who encouraged me. I can't remember what it was called, but they started basically potty training their baby at like a month old, where they hold them over the toilet and they.
Right.
I can't remember
elimination.
Yeah, and people were really trying to get me into that, and I was just like, so I'm like, I cannot have I don't have the energy to even think about doing such a thing. But then you feel bad as a mother, like, oh, my child's so behind.
You're terrible.
Except if you think about it, what's really happening is they're trying to housebreak a baby.
Yeah, like a dog. I know.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the baby doesn't know. The baby thinks the people around it are a bunch of lunatics.
Yeah, you're supposed to go like to the baby, like make it pee. Like, yeah, no, really. Like my friends are all doing this, and Will was born in a very hippy dippy sort of town, so yeah, it was.
Even if you could housebreak a baby, they don't have mobility.
No, you have to physically hold. As a good mother, you hold your child over the toilet.
But you teach them the sign language for going to the bathroom.
You teach them sign language too.
Oh
my goodness!
But what this means, and I think this is a very important point, is that if you practice elimination communication, you can never leave your baby for a moment.
Exactly.
Yes.
Or it's always, if you think about natural parenting, it's always more work for mother.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You don't get a babysitter. No babysitter in the world is doing that shit for you. Like, no.
It's hard enough to find a good one, but then you add that.
I need you to hold my child over the toilet when you think it might want to pee.
Read the baby's mind.
Right. I went to a dinner party a few years ago, and I was seated next to somebody who I hadn't met before, and she introduced herself, and she asked me what I did, and I started talking about my blog, and she said, that is so interesting because I'm a clinical psychologist, and I mostly care for young women. And she said, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've never seen so much postpartum and early childhood depression.
Right.
Because women are told that to be a good mother, you can't do anything for yourself.
No. Yeah. And you have to feel as a mother when your baby's about to poop. You have to if you can't do that, you're a terrible mother.
Well, and you have to know, but the baby doesn't even know. Because they don't have.
No, you have to do that for the baby.
Yeah, you have to think about
breastfeed
pooping
until the child is 10.
Yeah,
right. You have to sleep with the child in your bed. You can't feel like a woman and have relations with your husband that makes you feel like you were before you had kids. You have to be completely attached to that child. It's terrible and it's scary. And I mean, at the best of times, parenting is fraught with guilt and fear. Like
maybe I did it
that
wrong,
you're not
doing it
that
wrong.
you're not
You're
doing
doing it
it
wrong.
right.
Okay.
And then all of these extra things like natural parenting, it just makes it so much worse.
It's worse. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the point of it. It's supposed to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't all parenting natural?
See, I've got a different vision of natural parenting where it's like, you can walk, you're now free.
That's because you don't have any kids.
I live with two. But
That's
Push
true.
him out of the
That's
tree.
true.
I think the two N words in the world of health are natural and normal.
Yeah.
They really don't belong in any discussion because they don't really mean anything.
Right.
Because something is natural does not make it good.
That's right.
But, you go to the grocery store and there's all natural Cheetos. what does that even mean?
Well, they grew off a Cheeto tree outside that they just pick them off and sell them in the
They
grocery
grow in
store.
Vermont.
If you can convince people to buy all natural Cheetos, then you can convince them to do anything.
I've seen
actually
organic
impressive.
salt.
It's
So
probably the hipsters
Right,
that are
organic
smoking a
stuff.
lot of weed. They need their all
That's
natural
funny.
Cheetos.
Well, that's the other thing about natural parenting is you shop your way to perfection.
Yes.
Yes.
It requires a lot of products and a lot of services,
Yeah.
which is really ironic considering that it's supposed to be natural, and in nature people didn't have products and services.
Exactly.
right.
There's so many Facebook groups and so many books and so many ebooks.
And products.
Yeah.
I mean, there was like I have my baby in Victoria, BC, and there was a store like a hipster baby store that sold you your home birth package, which was whatever $300 or I mean, this is all it's like a tarp.
Oh, and don't forget the plastic.
If you got to lay out a
pool.
tarp, then there's something already going on.
Well, the tarp really ain't a bad idea, actually. If you're going to
Sometimes
do
it's
that, I don't
good
know.
to have a tarp.
Or you could go to a hospital where they do that for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'll bring my tarp.
So a question I have, and I'm not knowledgeable in the difference between the benefits or the dangers of home versus hospital birth. I'm assuming hospital birth is much safer. Just wondering
Yes,
what the
although-
statistics are on that, on the differences.
There's a big difference between the United States and other countries. And so home birth is much safer in Canada than it is in the U.S.
Okay.
And for a very simple reason. The United States is the only country the only industrialized country in the world that has two classes of midwives. It has certified nurse midwives, which are among the best educated, best trained midwives in the world, and are comparable or better trained than the midwives in Canada, the UK, the Netherlands, Australia, any place you care to name. But we also have home birth midwives who used to be called lay midwives, which was accurate because they were lay people, not midwives. But they got together in the late 80s, early 90s, led by Ina May Gaskin, and they made up a credential to award to themselves.
Wow.
And they call themselves certified professional midwives, which is CPM.
That's not misleading at all.
Right. Yeah, that was completely accidental how close it was. And I've communicated with women whose babies have been injured and died as a result of home birth, and they never knew their midwife was not a real midwife.
That's terrible.
And so the statistics for home birth deaths in this country are pretty bad. In the best case scenario, the death rate is 3 times higher than comparable risk hospital birth. And in certain complicated situations like breech, the death toll is as much as 50 times higher.
Are you talking about the baby dying or the mother?
The baby dying.
Mm-hmm.
The chance of a baby dying is about 100 times greater than the chance of a mother dying.
Okay.
So we don't expect to see, actually you should never see a home birth death if you have proper risk criteria. Mm-hmm. And in Canada, for example, a an American home birth midwife would not be allowed to practice because she doesn't have the training that the Canadian midwives have, and she doesn't have the education. And Canadian midwives work in the hospital and at home, whereas American home birth midwives aren't allowed in hospitals because hospitals have people that need actual medical care, not magical thinking. And in Canada, there are very strict criteria for risk. You just can't have a home birth because you want one. If you have a high-risk condition, you just can't have a home birth. And even then, as many as 40% of first-time mothers are transferred into the hospital at some point during labor because things aren't going well or they need pain relief or something. But it's much safer in Canada. And for certain select populations, it's as safe as hospital birth. And what do I mean by select populations? It's if nothing goes wrong, home birth is just as safe as hospital birth.
Good thing it's very easy to predict if things go wrong.
Well, right. So the key to safe home birth is risking out anybody who might have a complication.
Actually, can I ask a question? I remember when I was pregnant, there was a study that came out from the Netherlands looking at hospital births, but directed by the care of a midwife versus directed by the care of an OB. And there was, as far as I recall, there were worse outcomes with the midwives, even in hospital. I don't know if that's still true or.
Well, there have been other studies that find that the results are somewhat comparable.
Okay.
It's hard to know what to make of the whole thing because, one of the interesting things is that the Netherlands has always been held out and has held itself out as a paradise of home birth. And yet the Netherlands had one of the worst perinatal mortality rates in Western Europe. Now, you can't say that that's definitely because of midwives, but when the Dutch started to study this, because they were very upset to find this out, they concluded that a lot of the problem was improper risk assessment, where midwives would tell women they were lower risk than they actually were in order for the midwives to keep them as patients.
Because obviously they have an incentive to keep them as patients. So,
right. But I just read something from the Netherlands that said that in the wake of these disclosures, the home birth rate, which at one point was 60% and 10 years ago was 30%, is now 13%.
Oh, wow.
How accurate are these risk factor indications? I mean, can you tell if a woman has a perfect risk factor? Can you tell her honestly that her chances or the chances of a bad outcome is the same for a home birth as a hospital birth? Like, is that actually possible?
Well, it's all really a matter of luck. If you risk out people that are likely to have complications and you get an incredibly low risk group and then nothing goes wrong, everything's going to be exactly the same as the hospital because you didn't need to be in the hospital.
Yeah.
But we only know that afterwards.
That's what I'm asking. So basically what you're saying, what I take away from that is because you don't know if something's going to go wrong. I mean, there's things that can go wrong that have nothing to do, just the baby's positioning or things that you have no idea about. Like,
there could be risks that you can't predict.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like seatbelts. You could say, look, the risk of my getting in an accident, if I'm just riding around the neighborhood and not going on the highway, et cetera, is really very low. So I guess I just won't wear my seatbelt.
Right.
Now, most of the time, you're going to be fine because you aren't going to get in an accident.
Yeah.
But if you do, if it turns out that you turn onto a street where there's a drunk driver and he hits you and you're not wearing your seatbelt, it really doesn't matter that you were in a low-risk situation. And the same thing applies to birth. Because if there's one thing we can say about birth, it's totally unpredictable.
Yeah.
We can give some odds, but you just never know.
How do you respond to the home birth argument that hospitals are a source of infection? Obviously, it's true that your chances of getting an infection are greater if you are in a hospital than if you're not in a hospital. But I don't know how that argument holds up.
Well, it's ironic because the leading causes of infectious death in newborn are bacteria that grow in the mother's vagina.
That's going to be in either home birth or hospital birth, I would think.
The leading causes of newborn infectious deaths are group B strep and herpes virus. And so, well, first of all, usually the postpartum floors, labor and delivery and postpartum floors are usually separate from the rest of the hospital for just this reason.
Right.
They don't put sick people on the same floors as new mothers and babies. But in truth, the real threat is in the mother, not in the house or the hospital or anywhere else, in the mother.
That's interesting. Huh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like so much of alternative health. When you really know something about it, it doesn't make nearly so much sense as it seems to on the surface.
Yeah.
What does Dennis O'Leary say? There's there's a word for alternative medicine that works, that has been shown to work.
It's
called medicine. Yeah.
Tim mentioned.
Oh, I had
he had a Canadian right.
That's all right.
Right, Tim Minchin. I love Tim Minchin.
He's fantastic.
Who doesn't?
What are your thoughts on doulas? Because they're slightly different than midwives.
Well, the original idea of doula is a great idea. I mean, doula, the word is Greek for slave.
Yes, that's right.
Is it?
That's, somebody that exists just to help you feel more comfortable. That's really an awesome idea, especially in labor. But doulas, the big problem with a lot of these things is everybody wants to monetize them.
Yeah, exactly.
So doulas made up credentials for themselves and have workshops and give themselves credentials and have letters after their name. And somewhere along the way, they got confused and decided that they were qualified to give medical advice.
Right.
So they're like chiropractors.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, just like that. Or homeopaths, they really think that they know what they're talking about. And to become a certified doula, and we're not talking about somebody who just names herself a doula without the credential takes 16 hours of workshops to get. So exactly how much are you really going to learn?
That's the same as a doctor, right?
Well, that's almost as much as med school. It's almost the same.
Well, they answer that two ways. First is that doctors don't learn anything in medical school, or they don't learn anything about birth or whatever
it's just
it is.
Drinking games and I don't know, tic-tac.
Right.
They just learn how to prescribe drugs.
Yeah.
And the other thing is and midwives do this even more than doulas, but they like to call themselves experts in normal birth. But that's kind of like being a meteorologist who's an expert in sunny weather. You don't really need that. You need somebody. The whole point of having somebody attend you in birth is because something might go wrong, and you need somebody who knows what to do about it.
Yeah.
So having somebody who meets every eventuality by saying, well, this is just a variation of normal. Yes, you're bleeding all over the floor, but we see this. That's not helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they exert a certain pressure to, like, even let's say this doula is really just there for your support and your comfort. Even then, with the doula culture, there's a pressure. For example, like, let's say you're in the middle of labor, you decide, oh no, I want an epidural. This is way worse than I thought. There's going to be a serious amount of pressure from your doula not to do that.
Not necessarily. I've had a completely different experience because the doula was with me the entire time. I had to be induced.
And how was that experience?
It was a fantastic experience.
Well, there you go. It
was a positive experience because the doula understood the role of the doula, and there wasn't it was an interesting adversarial type of relationship between my OB-GYN that I had, who was obviously skeptical of doulas, and
your doctor,
my doctor, and the doula, because those they kind of fought, and it was interesting in hindsight to see that adversarial relationship. But
you were able to observe that through labor pain. I'm really impressed, actually. I'm really interested by the interplay of your relationship. Oh, this hurts a little bit.
It was interesting because the doula went and got me a sandwich. The doula was originally going to cut the cord.
They let you eat?
They let me eat
God damn.
a bit. But then, it didn't stay
You
down.
vomited it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that's so, this is another one of these things. The natural childbirth community is all bent out of shape about eating in labor. Well, we know in childbirth that women get the technical term is an ileus, that their digestive tract stops working.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that if somebody eats something and their intestines aren't moving it along and they feel terrible and they feel nauseous, and then it's likely to be vomited.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I barfed too.
Back.
Yeah, me too.
But to finish that story, I mean, in the end, it was the doctor that came through for me. The doula was fantastic. She was there to document and to support, and I think my husband was encouraged by her role. But also in the end, it was my doctor when it came time to remove this child from my uterus.
Yeah, she did so safely.
She basically, she was the one that communicated to me in that moment, and it was there was a connection, and I understood what I had to do and how I had to push, and she was the one that ultimately came through for me. And I mean, it was, the experience was whatever. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's so transcendent." But I mean, quitting smoking.
You sound sarcastic there.
Yeah, it's like the best thing that ever happened to me. No, quitting smoking was pretty awesome, and running a half marathon was a little more awesome.
Did you do that? You're amazing.
Yeah, almost 10 years ago. But I mean, and that's why I wanted to know your take, Amy, on the doula thing, because for me, I mean, I had a hospital birth with a doula there.
Right. And it can be, I mean, people fall over when I say this, but when I have 4 children, they're all adults now, but I had the equivalent of a doula with me, was a friend of mine who was a nurse, and she did this on the side, and she was fantastic. That's because awesome. She was totally devoted to making me as comfortable as possible and making things as easy as possible. She did not have medical opinions, and she let the doctor take care of the doctor stuff, and she took care of the comfort stuff.
Yeah,
and that's what a doula should do.
Mm-hmm. And that's what mine did.
That's fantastic.
Sounds good.
We need more like that.
Yeah.
Sounds like every woman who has birth should have somebody like that.
Well, the other stuff, the being induced was intense. And I mean, I think for me, I was still a little bit full of woo back in the day before, 6 years ago, I guess. And I wanted a natural childbirth, and I was choked that I couldn't because I had to be on blood thinners because of a pre-existing condition.
I don't know if you're a real mother, Angela. I'm not sure. Now that I've known this about you, I don't know.
I have a question for you on a slightly different topic.
Well, I just want to say one last thing about this. One of the things that I think is most interesting is what we've witnessed over the last 20 to 30 years is the commodification of the birth experience.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Turning a birth into a wedding, similar to a wedding.
Yeah.
And, back in the day, a bad birth experience was a dead baby or a dead mother or both. Now, a bad birth experience is, they didn't follow all 700 things on my birth plan.
Exactly.
And
you said pain. You weren't supposed to say pain.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. People would, when I was practicing, women would say to me, "I don't want you to give me an epidural even if I ask for one." No, can't do that. Can't do that.
If you ask for it, we're giving it to you.
Right. You think about what you're saying. Who decides how much pain medication they're going to take after surgery before they have the surgery.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. My doctor told me that she had a patient who asked her recently, how can I make sure that I have an orgasm as my baby is pushed out of me? Yeah.
Well, because orgasmic birth, that's a thing.
I know it's another thing. Yes, I learned that day that's a thing.
Right. Well, because it's part of the one-upsmanship. That is the heart of this commodification of birth. So, for example, people used to say, well, I was awake for my birth. Then there was, well, I didn't have any medication for my birth. And then there was, I had my birth at home. And now there's, I had an orgasm. I mean, I really think some people just don't know what an orgasm is. If they think
Well, and
but,
if you're using a child to reach that,
that's weird.
The phenomenon of orgasmic birth was never described in any culture until it was invented in 1992. So, and it appears that the only people who can have orgasms in birth are white women from privileged backgrounds. So, you tell me whether this is real or not.
I watched a video of a woman having orgasmic birth.
Good for her.
Super.
Not really sure where to go.
You're just jealous that you can't have an orgasmic birth.
It just shows you that there's no limit to the craziness. I don't
know. I feel like we can go further. Like, what else can we do here?
Well, I mean, now the big thing, well, it's not a big thing, but people talk about it a lot, is free birth. Have your baby at home, but don't have a medical attendant.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I mean, there is the one more
really
crazy one where they're trying to have birth with dolphins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think if you're really committed to having a natural birth, you should have birth with sharks. Because then it will really show your fearlessness.
what about free fall birth?
Yeah. What about that?
Jump out of an airplane.
That could be good.
You got 3 minutes and 18 seconds. Go. Push.
Right.
Mini parachute.
But it's funny when you talk about it, but from another perspective, it's actually kind of horrifying because, if it's not an achievement for a 15-year-old Afghan teenager to have a baby on the floor of her hut because she has, without professional attendance, because she doesn't have that choice, then how can it be an achievement for a privileged white woman to do it in her umpteen thousand square foot home surrounded by her 600 closest friends?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It isn't. It's just such an expression of privilege.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a question about somebody else you had written about, Jennifer Margulis.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's one of your favorite people, just like Kelly Brogan.
Right.
But have you ever talked to Jennifer directly?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I have talked to her because, who did I talk to? I'm trying to think. One of the authors of one of these big pregnancy books. Let's see. Oh, I talked to Jennifer Block. She interviewed me. But no, I've never talked to Jennifer Margulis personally, although I've offered to debate her many times. But one of the things you'll find is that I'm like the third rail of the world of natural parenting. Anybody who claims any expertise does not want to appear in the same setting with me. And, they say it's because I'm such a mean, horrible, terrible person. But it's really because they know, and this is the worst part, they know that they don't know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to appear in a setting where they'll just be eviscerated.
Of course.
And that's why I tell people, people say to me, well, how do you know if this website or Facebook page is good? And I say, just as a simple rule of thumb, if they delete people who present evidence against what they're saying, then you don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Because if they can't defend themselves to their critics, then what they're selling you is not science.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jennifer's just crazy, just straight up insane. She always leans on her accreditations.
Yeah, she's an accredited travel writer, and she has a PhD in English. If that doesn't qualify for unvaccinated, I don't know what does.
Oh my God.
That's the same as a medical degree, right?
Yeah.
If you guys don't know who she is, she's one of the vaccine autism psychos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now she's flogging ultrasound and autism.
Yeah.
Ultrasound causes autism?
Well, just like breastfeeding does.
Breastfeeding causes
but
autism.
breastfeeding prevents it.
Right.
It's
not
bottle
breastfeeding.
feeding.
We have air quotes here for the listeners here, just so you know.
Oh,
That's why my son's autistic, because he's vaccinated and he was bottle fed.
right.
Not because he just happened to be autistic.
Well, I have a child on the spectrum too, and it really is very frustrating to see the way these children are demonized. That I'd rather my child be dead. Mm-hmm. I cannot envision that. I honestly can't see how a mother could feel that way.
Yeah, Destin makes this point all the time.
Yeah. I've had the argument where people say, well, how could you have vaccinated your kid? That caused him to be autistic. I'm like, well, I'd rather him be autistic than dead. Vaccines don't cause autism, but even if they did, I would still fucking vaccinate my kid so I would have a kid.
Well, the thing I think that is it would be hilarious if it weren't deadly, is that we're supposed to believe that, the NSA can't even keep its own material. You may have heard there was this giant hack of hospitals in the UK because with some NSA code. But we're supposed to believe that all the doctors in every country around the world and all the public health authorities in every country around the world are committed to a giant secret conspiracy, and in order to keep it secret, they're willing to vaccinate their own children. Does that make any sense at all?
It makes no sense.
No.
It's like that for every single conspiracy.
Yeah, I work in cancer care, and we get a similar sort of spiel for like chemo. Everyone knows that chemo and radiation is horrible and poisonous. It doesn't do anything. But yet, thousands of healthcare professionals deliver this stuff knowingly to cancer patients because we're evil.
Just like aliens exist, but somehow the American government is able to cover it up when they can't cover up anything ever.
Right. They can't cover up the president's consensual affair. No. Really. But, so much is really about feeling smarter than other people. There's this conspiracy and I know about it. And, but I tell people, if you're sick or you have an important medical decision to make, don't you really want to know what your doctor would do with his mother?
Exactly.
Isn't that what you want?
Well,
and not what the
feelings
quack
carrying the
down
same
the
weight
street
as
is going to
knowledge.
sell you. I didn't catch the end of that.
Sorry. We have a lot of feedback on our end. Delay.
There's a delay.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Feelings getting in the way of...
No, not in a way. People think that their feelings have the same weight as knowledge and education.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, and so much of this is, it doesn't even matter to these people whether or not they're correct. They just want to be validated.
Totally. The word I was looking for before was appropriation. We're appropriating painful childbirth.
But also orgasms.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I'm a white man.
Right,
We're the ones that do the appropriating.
Right. Can people make up their mind? Is it painful or is it orgasmic?
¿Por qué no es dos?
Oh, my God.
Well, marathons are getting longer and longer, and people are running farther and in worse conditions. So some people just like to be in pain.
Yes, but very few people make money from convincing other people to be in pain. And that's really the problem.
That's
here.
true.
You know, I'm pretty disappointed. You're not nearly as angry and angsty as I expected. I was looking forward to some yelling and...
No, she's amazing. I told you this.
Yes.
Well, I do have an online persona because you have to get readers. Although part of it is just since I no longer practice medicine, I don't have to be on my best behavior, and I can say what I actually think.
Right.
You know, before I used to nod my head up and down when people said ridiculous things, but now I can just say, that is just ridiculous.
It must be liberating.
Yeah, the only thing is that when you really look at this, a lot of people are getting hurt by quackery.
Yeah.
It's not, people often say, and there's a website of this name, what's the harm? There's actually a lot of harm. And, I get emails and Facebook messages all the time from women who are depressed, who sometimes suicidal because they feel that they have failed as mothers. Mm-hmm. And that's tragic. I mean, I tell people, you don't have to beat yourself up because your children will become teenagers and they will beat you up. And everything that you did wrong. And they will not care whether or not you breastfed. And they will not care whether or not they were born vaginally. In fact, if you tried to discuss it, they will be disgusted.
That sounds like a topic they might not want to touch.
Right.
They start that at age 5.
Children are all about, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And so women shouldn't be so hard on each other, and women shouldn't be so hard on themselves, because that's not what's important about motherhood. Motherhood is not powered by breast milk or vaginal birth. It's powered by love. That's all the baby cares about.
Yeah.
I love it.
That sounds like an excellent message.
Yeah,
Which is weird. We're not known for those.
That was your mic drop moment right there.
Right. Well, and a lot of times, what happens is women will respond by saying, I love my baby more than life. So I guess I must be doing something right. And I agree, because that's what the baby will remember. I mean, think about if there are many people who don't get along with their mothers, but I haven't met a single one who said, I'm mad at my mother because she only breastfed me for 9 months instead of 12. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Very true. We kind of forget that our babies are going to grow up and be like people.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. People with opinions, including that you are probably the dumbest mother ever. And that everything you say is totally embarrassing, and how can you embarrass them in front of their friends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
It sounds like this is a recent pain for you.
Well, my kids are through it now, but it scarred me. So, the infancy has a lot of physical work, but teenagers, they can really rip your heart out. Oh, yeah. And that's the hard, the hard parts of parenting are the things that no one knows the answer to. Like, everybody knows you need to feed the baby and you need to change the baby's diaper, and it really doesn't matter exactly how you do that. But, when you come to, should I send him to kindergarten this year when he'll be the youngest, or shall I wait till next year when maybe he'll be the oldest and the biggest and other kids will make fun of him?
Yeah, that's so true.
Or does my child have a learning disability? Is that what's wrong with why they're having tantrums when they're, when they're having trouble doing homework? Or, the ultimate is the other kids in middle school are making fun of my kid.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to feel really bad, you just want to go and you want to go and hurt somebody, and there's nobody to hurt. There's nothing to do. In fact, generally the best thing to do is to stay out of it.
Yeah,
that's painful.
It's so hard.
Louis C.K. does a good bet on that. He talks about how he like pulls some kid like in the playground away from his daughter. Like he's like way too rough with her, but his daughter's 8. It's hilarious. I don't do it well, but
I don't know. I'm pretty sure I could take out all those grade 1 kids that are picking on my kid.
You totally could, dude.
I'd put money on it.
You're like 7 feet tall.
Yeah. Well, my son is 7. He's in grade 1 and he's 4'2".
Yeah, he's huge.
Wow.
And he's on the spectrum.
Your kid is lovely.
He is.
Well, I'm sure there's even more than the usual challenges.
Well, when they're the only kid you have, then no. Because I don't know any difference.
Yeah, because you don't know. I mean, with me, it was my oldest child, and I really had no idea that there was an issue until I had another child.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's what put it in relief, because you just accept what you have.
Yeah.
Anyway, we seem to be having a weird echo issue, so if anybody has any closing questions, then we can.
All I want to say is this is my favorite interview ever.
Ooh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think there's lots left that we could be asking, but it would just stretch it out too long, and we wouldn't be able to get on with the rest of the show. So we might have to have you back on.
Oh, that would be awesome. Well, if I'm allowed to say some parting words, I would like to tell people who are listening that, there's a lot of things to beat yourself up about when you're a parent, but you should not let, these issues of natural childbirth and how much or even if you breastfed or attachment parenting, you should not be beating yourself up about that. Be kind to yourself, because the criticism is coming. It will come directly from your child. They will tell you exactly what you did wrong, and it won't be any of these things.
I love it.
Right on. I suppose before we let you go, where can people find your blog and whatnot?
So the blog is The Skeptical OB, SKEPTICALOB.com, and I also have a Skeptical OB Facebook page, and I write for a number of mainstream media publications, so sometimes you'll see some of my stuff. I have a piece in the Washington Post today about 5 myths about pregnancy.
You are very prolific.
Yeah, well, and it's so funny because when my children were growing up, they were always like, "Do you do anything?" I said, "Well, I write." Yeah, well, I like to sit at the computer too, but that's not doing something. Children really enhance your self-esteem,
don't they?
Yeah.
My son's 5. He still tells me he loves me more than anyone else in the world, and he kisses me on the lips when I drop him off at school. I love him.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
Exactly, I know.
Right. One of my sons was very affectionate as a small child, and then he went to school and, became very cognizant of what the other kids thought. And at the end of the 2nd grade, there was going to be a play, and he said to me, last year you embarrassed me, and I don't want you to embarrass me this year. I said, well, what did I do? And he said, well, you waved at the stage. And I said, well, how do you know I was waving to you? That's stumped
Well done.
But I promised I wouldn't wave to anybody.
That's fantastic.
Right on. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Oh,
And
thank you.
We're going to go to a commercial break here, and then we'll be back with David Richards to talk about a single school system in Saskatchewan.
So I'll be right back.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
If you like what we're doing and want to help us keep the lights on, go become a patron at patreon.com/Brainstorm Podcast. You can hear the bonus half hour that we record every episode and get a shout out when you support the show. Become a patron for just $1 an episode at patreon.com/Brainstorm Podcast. Or you can support the show by ordering a t-shirt, mug or other gear from our store at caffeepress.ca/Brainstorm Podcast Gear. If you can't afford to become a patron or buy gear, then why not give us a rating or write a review on iTunes or Stitcher? Every rating makes it easier for people to find us. Thanks for your support.
We are given one life, full of billions of small and large decisions. To be somebody, to change, to be kind, to give hope, to become a better person, and to leave a lasting impact on this planet. It is a decision to be made every single day while your heart is still beating. We've made our decision. Absence of clothing, atheist and science-based apparel and merchandise, donating 50% of our profits to charity. Look good and feel good, without God. Check us out at absenceofclothing.com and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest for discount codes and other sweet swag.
Use the code BRAINSTORM at absenceofclothing.com and get 10% off.
Hi, this is Dan,
Brian, and Matt with the Godless Revolution podcast. We've had a lot of great guests on this show.
such as Russell Glasser, Dan Arrow, Brian Fields, David Silverman, Doug Mesner, a.k.a. Lucian Greaves, and Joey Kirkman, whom we love a lot.
We've also had a lot of really cool local guests. And we're a podcast that likes to fight for the separation of church and state and against anti-skepticism of all kinds.
You should give us a listen, because if you don't, you're going to be really sad.
Make your ears happy. Listen to the Godless Revolution podcast.
Georgia, I've seen the streets in the West. I've driven down the 90. Well, hell, I've seen America's best. I've been through the Rockies. Well, I've seen Saskatchewan. I've driven down the Highway 1, just hoping that I'd see you soon. I'm coming home. 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 Coming home. Well, I've never been to Alaska, but I can tell you this. I've been to Lincoln, Nebraska, and hell, you know it ain't worth shit. I've been through Nova Scotia, Sydney to Halifax, but I'll never take any pictures, 'cause I know I'll just be right back. 'Cause I'm coming home. 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 Coming home. seen a palace in London, I've seen a castle in Wales, but I'd rather wake up beside you and breathe that old familiar smell. I never thought you could leave me. I figured I was the one, but I understand your sadness, so I guess I should just hold my tongue. But I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Coming home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Well, I know that we're taking chances. Tell me life was a risk. I just have one last question. Will it be my heart, or will it be his? Coming home. I'm 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 coming home. Coming home. I'm 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 coming home. Coming home. I'm coming home.
All right, so we're back, and we're going to be talking with David Richards about the One System Sask.
Hi, Dave.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I guess we kind of touched on this a bit for last week with the court ruling that implied or that said that non-Catholic students can't go to Catholic schools. And this seemed like an opportune time for a push for a single school system in Saskatchewan. So I guess, what is the point behind having one school system?
So there's two main reasons why we were sort of making the push. Sort of in general, the timing piece of it certainly comes into play, as you mentioned, the court ruling. The recent provincial budget also certainly adds to the fortuitous timing. But this is something most of us involved with One System Sask have believed in for years. It's just it really felt like a good time to make the effort to really get the message out there. So the two biggest reasons why we feel it's a good idea, one is cost. There's a study done in Ontario by the Ontario Federation of Urban Neighbourhoods. They put together a 5-year study that looked into how much the cost savings would be in that province.
Okay.
And they were pretty huge. The cost savings per year in Ontario would be anywhere from $1.2 to $1.6 billion per year.
Wow.
Now, Saskatchewan's about 1/10 the size, so we would need to scale back those estimates by about 10%. And
we
even
would
then,
only save hundreds of millions?
Only save hundreds of millions every single year.
I don't know if it's even worth the effort.
Yeah.
Well, it must be a hard sell with our government because they're not about cutting costs or anything.
Yeah.
So, like the numbers that we look at, estimating somewhere between $120 to $160 million a year in cost savings, which is between 3% and 4% of the education budget. So this isn't some like ludicrous, we're imagining cost savings that are unfathomable.
Right.
We're looking at cost savings that are about 2 and 3% of the provincial education budget, which again adds up to 120 to 160 million a year.
Right.
Which, in light of the recent $55 million cut to education budget,
would-
really good
yeah,
timing for
no kidding.
bringing this up. So there's the cost piece of it, and again, can go through sort of some of the breakdowns on where those cost savings come from, because the minister came out and challenged our numbers on that.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I can touch base on some of that in a moment. But the other reason is just it's the right thing to do as well. We live in a diverse, multicultural province. We live in a province that believes in, religious equality. That is a core principle for a lot of people. And that's a core principle for a lot of Christians. It's a core principle for a lot of Catholics. This isn't a bunch of atheists coming in and saying, only we believe in religious equality. It's a core principle for a lot of people. And the idea of having a separate, publicly funded, government-run school system that gives preferential treatment to one religion over others is certainly antithetical to sort of an ethical standpoint. And it's been going on for a long time.
I feel like you could maybe force the government to change their ways by the opposite approach, meaning that, okay, if you're going to have Catholic schools, then you have to have Hindu schools, you have to have Buddhist schools, Protestant school. Well, there's Catholic is a type of Christian, but Protestant, Mormon school. I mean, the government better fund all of them because it's not fair.
The thing that comes in is I could talk for hours about the history of this, and I know I don't have that long time, but the history of this basically does go back.
It's so stupid.
It goes back almost 200 years. We're looking at in sort of the mid 1840s, 1850s. Sort of the superintendent of education in Ontario was a guy named Ryerson, Egerton, I think is his first name, and he was virulently anti-Catholic, did not like Catholics.
Okay.
Which, again, if you go back 150, 200 years, that was the big religious divide, right? Protestant Catholic.
Right.
So Catholics living in Ontario were a persecuted minority. They absolutely had every right to believe that they needed protection because they were getting indoctrinated. Catholic children were going to school.
Right.
They were being indoctrinated into Protestantism. They were being told Catholicism was wrong. They were very much being converted at school out of their parents' faith. And so this compromise came in. And the Catholics basically fought to say, okay, and the reverse happened in Quebec, where the Protestants were having the exact same thing happening to them. Yeah. And so the compromise came in saying, okay, one of the things we will enshrine when Canada East and Canada West become a single colony, or sort of a unified colony, even before Confederation, was, okay, minority school rights is a thing we're going to have when we come together. But it was this idea of protecting a minority religion. It was an idea of, modern day equivalent of having a Muslim school that protects Muslim religious rights so they don't get trod over.
They're not getting indoctrinated into Catholicism.
Why not have fully secular schools instead, right? Is that not a way better solution?
That didn't occur to anyone 200 years ago.
Right. Yeah. But we do not live 200 years ago.
No, we sure don't. Because it wasn't a case where it was back then a secular public school system and a Catholic system. It was a Protestant system and a Catholic system.
Right.
The main primary system was already a religious school system. And say what you will about churches and religion in general, the Protestant Catholic churches in a lot of ways did do a lot for furthering public education. There were good things that came out of there. The concept of a public school does owe a fair bit of its history to churches.
Right.
But as you said, we've gotten past that. Now we don't have single religion schools anymore.
Are you aware of when that changed for the public schools?
To be honest, I don't know it's a slow transition.
I don't expect you to know. I was wondering if
no, and it changes province by province as well. So it's not one single thing.
Well, and one thing that happened after Confederation, when Quebec was joining, they actually wasn't that part of their condition that it had to be offered.
Well, it was like secular school or
no, private Catholic system.
A separate
Catholic system. Yeah, again, that condition continued into 1867. So in our Constitution, we have, it's called Article 93, and basically, like, we don't think of our Constitution sort of in the same way that the Americans think of theirs. But our Constitution, even the 1867 one, has a lot of those same protections. Even 150 years ago, they said the religion cannot promote one religion over another. That was a specific thing built into the religion.
Yeah.
But then they added Article 93 that said, except we're still allowed to have Catholic schools. So you
Catholic in particular.
And Catholic in particular. So you can't have what you're suggesting of that same treatment for Muslim schools or Hindu schools.
Right. Because Catholics are the ones that got...
in the Constitution.
Yeah. And so it was basically like, I've been talking about this, it's almost like you have this incredibly effective affirmative action program. Like it essentially was an affirmative action program before affirmative action was a thing.
Right.
So you have 150 years ago them saying there's this persecuted minority. We're going to give them special privileges, not to make them superior, but to balance and level out the playing field.
Okay.
What ended up happening, though, is gradually over time, and this goes back to Vatican II, essentially, when the Catholic Church decided to be a lot more ecumenical in its approach, the Catholic schools stopped being as Catholic. They became more or less Christian schools rather than Catholic schools. And it was, again, a gradual process. This wasn't overnight.
Saskatchewan in particular? Or so I went to Catholic school in Alberta, and it was Catholic.
Around the world. So... Again, it's a thing where Catholicism post-Vatican II became more ecumenical in their approach, which is a good thing. But what it meant was Catholic schools, like they have Christian ethics class, not Catholic ethics class now. And they
I don't know
have
if that was my experience, but anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. And some are more Catholic than others.
We learned a lot of rosary shit, man. That's pretty
fair,
freaking Catholic.
That was like 30 years ago, though.
Ooh.
That's actually true. Not quite, but I'll for rounding.
Even if we're talking
like
28
years ago.
Yeah, like,
thank you. I like him a lot better than I like you.
It's becoming more and more secular, which is the problem. So we've already been violating the law in spirit for a long time. Right? The law in spirit says, in Article 93 of the Constitution, in spirit says we're creating this special system by Catholics for Catholics that teaches specialized Catholic education so that Catholics are not sort of absorbed into the main system. They don't lose their culture or heritage or religion within this dominant school system. But as soon as you start having it become for more of a Christian school system, instead of it being a privilege that helped protect the 10-15% of the population that was persecuted, it's now a special system that specifically accommodates the 30% of the population that's Catholic and generally accommodates the 75% of the population that's Christian,
right?
Or 70%, or however the numbers break down.
Yeah.
And now it's not a special privilege to protect the religious minority. Now it's a special privilege that gives preferential treatment to the majority.
Right,
and that's where you really start running into problems on the spirit of Section 93.
So when you say spirit, do you mean like Holy Ghost?
No. The intent...
I'm fucking with you.
Yeah, the Americans talk about the founder's intent a lot as if it's almost a holy thing, and we don't have that same idea. But the intent behind Section 93 has been violated probably for at least 20 years. What the judge in the Theodore case said, we were violating the letter of the law as well. You know, we've been violating the intent of the law for a couple decades. Yeah. But more to the point, the letter of the law is broken as well. And lawyers pay a lot of attention to the letter of the law, right? So you can get away with breaking the intent of a law if you're following the one or the other. But as soon as you're breaking both the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, that's when judges are pretty much have to come out and say, now that this case is in front of me, I have to rule a certain way.
Right.
Yeah. If the case never gets before a judge, it doesn't matter.
Change,
But since it did come before a judge, now it's going to be this way. There's going to have to be something that changes.
But no, because of notwithstanding.
Yeah.
The neat thing is, but notwithstanding is notwithstanding.
It doesn't work.
It only applies to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It doesn't apply to the Constitution. Like the BNA Act of 1867.
Sorry, what notwithstanding? What are you talking about?
So
I'm not
notwithstanding clause.
Smart or informed.
So constitutional history, yay. In 1982,
oh man.
in 1982, when Canada patriated the Constitution. So in 1982, we basically said, hey, it doesn't make sense for our Constitution to be a part of British legislation. It should probably be a Canadian thing.
Right.
We wrote our own Constitution. We added a part to it called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
I don't remember it because I was not that old.
That's fair.
Sorry, FYI, Destin.
You don't remember the birth of the universe.
Yes.
But you know all about it.
Yeah.
So
1982. Sorry, continue.
This is a
Charter
good
of Rights
discussion.
Charter of Rights and Freedoms
breaking it up.
basically enshrines a lot of these things. They have rules that say, hey, we probably shouldn't do things like not hire Jews, or we shouldn't do things like
Is it worded that way?
We probably shouldn't do
Not
things
directly, no.
like persecute people for their color of their skin. These are bad things.
Yes.
But they added essentially a backdoor. It's our nuclear option in our Constitution, where they basically said Canadian judges are not elected. They're not. It's not a political post, which means they're not accountable to the electorate. So in 82, one of the things they kind of said was, in a democracy, we really should have the highest authority in the land be someone who's elected, not someone who's appointed. So we should have something that can override a judge's ruling on the Constitution or a judge's ruling on the Charter. So there's a loophole, essentially, Section 33 of the Constitution that says a provincial or federal government can bring in a law that violates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But there's a couple of conditions on it. One, the law has to explicitly acknowledge that it's violating the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So the law you can't just kind of slip it in there. You have to say, hey, everyone, we're violating basic fundamental human rights in the law we're about to make.
Yeah.
And it has a 5-year sunset clause. So every 5 years, the law expires and has to be reenacted again if you want it to continue. And it's also not a carte blanche. You can do everything you want. It only lets you violate certain parts. And the problem that the Wall government will likely run into, and again, legal scholars are already starting to talk about this, is Section 93 isn't one of the things they can violate. The notwithstanding clause doesn't let you violate Section 93. So what's interesting is, you can opt out of Section 93, which is what other provinces have done.
I was going to ask, if it's a constitutional thing, it seems like it's going to be really hard to get rid of this.
It's actually really easy to opt out of it altogether.
Interesting.
But what he's hoping to try and do is not, you can either be in or out. And what he's trying to do is find a way of using Section 33, so use the notwithstanding clause.
So that it can stay in.
I want a half break, but not really, but sort of kind of almost. Yeah. And you can't do that.
Right. Maybe if you worked it as a P3 kind of thing.
Even if you did, you're kicking the can down the road. What would happen then is...
I'm just being an ass.
Yeah,
I hate Brad Wall.
Go ahead.
Fuck you, Brad Wall.
I am not saying that.
Destin is
I know you don't want to, but I will.
Brad Wall.
He
wants to fuck you.
What's interesting is this issue is not actually a partisan issue. In other provinces, this has never been partisan.
If you have a far right-leaning, super religious government, that's their base, right? Is to protect these. Yeah, I mean they got to be seen to do that. That's my reading. That's my reading.
Yeah, it's very right-wing governments also often are renowned for liking to spend less money on education.
But there's socially right-leaning and there's fiscally right-leaning, right?
Yeah. Again, this has been a cross-party issue, though. This is the idea, the concept behind unifying school system is supported by the Fraser Institute. It's supported by other right-wing think tanks. It's been supported by former conservative cabinet ministers. It's the push in Ontario to try and expand this so it wouldn't just be a Catholic system, that it would allow other religions, was pushed forward by a conservative government and then
what did
defeated.
Hitler think of it? He was farthest right.
I think Hitler had a very unique relationship with the Catholics. That's a topic for another history lesson.
That's a whole episode.
Another big, complicated schmozzle.
That's what I always ask myself, WWHD.
Well, our organization has already been compared to the Ku Klux Klan because apparently
you got that comparison.
We got compared to the KKK because the KKK also don't like Catholics. And I'm it's not that we don't like Catholics.
Yeah, but you're organized, well-spoken, and have most of your teeth. How can you be compared to them?
You shouldn't show up asking people to sign your petition wearing all white.
Why do you dress like that, retard?
No. So basically, it's when you come back to the constitutional piece of it, it's you're kind of trying to thread the needle, and that's where he's going to run into difficulty. So ultimately, moving forward, post Theodore court ruling, there's really going to be three choices. Choice number one is do nothing, at which point the Theodore court ruling kicks in, and then effective June 2018, tens of thousands of children get kicked out of their school.
Right.
Seems like a bad option.
Like,
even
that's not
even
a
for
good
me who
option.
hates like a separate school system, I don't want to fuck over
that
children.
is
A bunch of kids getting kicked out of
Even
schools.
Destin would be
problematic.
against that. And he hates everyone, even children, no matter how adorable they are.
Because that's bad for both systems, right? If you do that, all of a sudden you have a massively underfunded Catholic system with a whole bunch of empty schools or half-empty schools. You have an overburdened public system who now gets a lot more tax revenue, or provincial coffer revenue, I should say. But all of us, and has to come up with space for these.
Right, yeah.
thousands
There's
of
still
children.
not enough space.
That
and
just that option
staffing
really
and-
sucks.
yeah.
And like a year and a half isn't a long time. It's not even a year and a half. So, and again, I think one of the things Wallace talked about is using the notwithstanding to kick the can down the road, but it's not great. So that's option two, though, is trying to find a way of bypassing it. So there's the appeal. Which there's already been talk that ruling's going to be appealed. Yeah. And then, or the notwithstanding clause. Those two sort of fall into the same category, trying to find a legal backdoor to make it work. And it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in court costs being paid by the government. And like one of the interesting things about the court case that happened in Theodore, the government was funding both sides of the case.
Yeah.
Like government money paid for both litigants.
And didn't they like needlessly pay a whole bunch of money? Like it could have been resolved sooner, but
yeah, it was lots of money's gone, and more money goes into it if you're trying to start using notwithstanding clause because there'll be legal challenges.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why Brad's trying to save money so he can sue so he can go to court here, then sue the federal government.
because he doesn't want to pay carbon tax.
Yeah. So the option number two is trying to find a legal backdoor.
Okay.
And that may work short term, but at best it's going to work short term. Like at absolute best, that's not a good solution.
Right.
So option three, we come to the unifying school systems. So with unifying school systems, you kids get to keep going to the same school they're going to today.
Right.
So it's not like all of because the Catholic Church has not paid one penny towards the Catholic school system.
Is that so?
Ever.
It's all taxes.
There's not
Ever.
a single penny. And actually, they're prohibited to.
Fucking
So
hate those fuckers.
in their defense, they're not allowed to. It is the Catholic Church is not.
Stop defending the Catholic Church, buddy. Come on.
The Catholic Church is not allowed to own a school in the separate system. They can own private schools, and then Saskatchewan also has some very special and unique laws when it comes to public money going to private schools.
Yeah.
And that's its own issue, and that's problematic as well.
Definitely.
But the Catholic Church doesn't own any of these schools. These schools are owned by the government in the exact same way every other public school is owned.
Yeah.
So we've heard people talking like it's as simple as taking the cross off the wall and changing the name. And it is slightly more complicated than that.
It's called a crucifix. I learned this in Catholic fucking
Not the T.
school.
It's not a T with
There's
a
both.
If Jesus is on it,
If
it's called
Jesus is on it, it's
it's
crucifix.
yeah.
If it's just a...
But trust me, in Catholic school, it's all fucking
crucifix.
crucifixes.
So
Okay.
it is
Crucify.
slightly more complicated than that, but most of the complication comes in on the bureaucratic end, not on the front end.
That's
So
right.
ideally, teachers keep teaching in the same schools they're teaching in today. Kids keeps going to the same schools they're going to today. That continues on, September 2018 or whenever this happens. September 1st, Labor Day comes, you're going to the same school you left at the end of June. Now, on an ongoing basis, what some of the benefits of a unifying school system are, you now get to go to the school that's closest to you rather than having to get bused 5 kilometers away to go to the school of your system or whatnot, right? Like,
And what about all these new schools that have been built that are like half Catholic, half public? How will we?
they become one school.
They just open the board, like open the. I mean, I was talking to.
It becomes a bigger school, and that there's some logistic issues.
Yeah.
You then
because it was designed to have two separate. Like, for example, I was talking to the principal who's organizing this, and he was saying that they actually designed two separate libraries because the Catholics are only allowed to have the kids there can read. They're not they're not allowed to have Harry Potter or whatever the fuck.
One of the things that could be interesting about those joint use schools is you can then have French and English on either side.
Yeah.
So right now, in the current system,
English kids touching my kids.
in the current system, if someone gets to grade 2 in a French immersion school and it's a single track French immersion school and they're struggling, and their parent makes the decision, you know what, my kid's really, really struggling, and I want to change them back to the English track school.
They got to change schools.
They have to change schools, or vice versa. If you start in kindergarten in English track, it's virtually impossible to switch to French immersion at that point, both academically because it's hard to get caught up, and there are programs to help with that.
I don't know if that's true. Whatever. Okay,
there are dual track French immersion schools where the school has both English and French in it, but the push is more and more to go to single track school.
Okay. In Regina, I only know of two single track French immersions. There's Walker and Massey, right?
I think that's the push, though, going forward. I think you're going to see a lot more single-track French immersion schools, regardless of how this goes. But those dual-sided schools would make a perfect
like when I went to French immersion. Okay, we did not talk to the English kids. We weren't friends with them. We didn't play with them. We just
really
fuck the English kids.
Wow,
that was our attitude. No, but really, we didn't know them. I know.
How Quebecois of you.
Yeah, I know. We were just like, no, we did not like you. Except we didn't have access. We were French immersion.
But you also so going forward, what you then do is unless you have an older brother, an older sister, or whatnot in the existing school, you then start going to the school that makes more sense. So you're not having to. So that's where some of the transportation costs come in. You only have to pay for one, even if you are. Utilizing the same schools as you are today, you can switch to having only one transportation company instead of two different. Like my street, I see 4 school buses going by every single day. Every morning, we are paying 4 different yellow buses to drive by and pick up kids from that exact same
and
school.
Administratively, right?
And administratively,
how many? There's obviously a higher organizational structure that.
Well, that's the biggest cost.
And there's cabs. There's cabs that are driving kids to school.
There sure are, yeah. So we cut down on those costs. You save costs on economy of scale. Yeah. There's a number of ways that the costs cost savings come in. But the day one is you keep going. Your kids keep going to the same school they're in today.
Which is what a lot of parents are concerned about.
For sure. And I would be concerned about that too.
That should absolutely be a priority.
Well, right? and some people that are worried about still having the same teachers, so them still having that same idea of still teaching.
For sure.
Of still teaching the Catholic values and stuff. Yeah. Going forward, the other idea with that is to actually mix the teachers through a couple different schools too.
But teachers move, as it is, teachers move schools.
Yeah.
They do.
In the current setup, teachers already move schools. But I would suggest if this goes forward, Wall decides to let us have a referendum and people vote for unifying school systems and I get put in charge of the combination, which I won't be, but if I was, I would say for the first year, keep the teachers where they are.
Right.
And then you let normal shuffling occur as it would normally occur throughout.
I don't know if you could force teachers to. I mean, teachers want to move around sometimes.
That's fair. So if there's teachers who want to move, you don't come in and say teachers aren't allowed to move, but you say basically you do there's no more movement. There's no more movement than there would be in any other year.
Okay.
And you probably will find a number of teachers saying, I do want to change now that this happens.
Because there's twice as many opportunities because the Catholic school job openings would be available to the public school teachers because there's a lot of frustration amongst teachers who have temporary contracts that don't have full-time contracts. It's really tough to find any kind of regularity to their lives.
Well, and you have the 30 or 40% of teachers in Catholic schools that aren't even Catholic.
Well,
they just say
and
they
the
are.
people that are on the sub list that want to have regular work, you have twice the amount of work that you could have.
What's interesting is one of the things I would like to find out is if we do end up going with this option number 2, where if Wall does decide he's going to bring in the notwithstanding clause to try and get an end run around the law so that non-Catholic students can go to Catholic schools.
Right.
In that same piece of legislation, is he going to legislate it so that non-Catholic teachers and staff can be teachers and staff at these schools.
Yeah.
Because I've talked about this on our page, but probably the most overwhelming, I don't even know the word to say, the most overwhelming conversation I've had when talking to people about this, I was talking to an employee of a Catholic school in Saskatchewan, and they're not a teacher. So this isn't someone who teaches catechism or Christian ethics. They're not a teacher at all,
right?
But they're an employee of the school, and they were saying, it's like, I have to be scared that I'm scared of the fact that my boss might find out I'm queer and they might find out I'm Jewish because I can get fired for either one of them.
Oh, jeez.
And that's legal. It is 100% legal. And that's been ruled on by the courts. The courts have ruled, and this goes back to the 90s, the courts have ruled that it is the hiring policies of the Catholic schools can be discriminatory because Section 93 says you cannot launch a human rights complaint against the Catholic school system. They are immune to that.
Right.
Period. It's not even, the courts aren't even allowed to make a ruling.
Wow.
So when it was ruled on by the lower courts that said, yep, the Catholic School Board of Ontario is allowed to be discriminatory. And then when it came to the Supreme Court said, we can't rule on this. The lower ruling stands. And so it is 100% legal for a custodian. This person wasn't a custodian, but it doesn't matter. A custodian in the Catholic school system, if the school principal finds out they're Jewish, they can get fired.
Or a teacher.
Or a teacher.
Right.
Or a teacher's aide.
Yeah.
Or the person working at the before and after program.
If they find out the custodian is a teacher, they can get fired? No, I'm joking.
And that's true if they're Muslim. That's true if they're gay.
That's ridiculous. That's literally the most... and what are... I don't know.
They have morality clauses.
Is it true if they're redheads?
For fuck's sake. I hate gingers. Like, fuck gingers
like, it could
so
be.
bad.
Like, I don't think that's one that they're going to do.
They're demons, right?
No.
I hate gingers.
They have a higher pain tolerance?
Yeah. So it's... So at the very, very, very bare minimum, if you're going to try and bend and twist the Constitution to allow this, I would at least like to see it bent and twisted so that Jews didn't have to hide the fact that they were Jewish from the government.
Have I ever
Absolutely.
I've never understood why you have to
Jews
be
are there in
Catholic to teach
Saskatchewan.
chemistry.
Yeah. And it's like, I hear this and go like, it's 2017.
Yeah.
I am living in Canada. How the hell are
But
we
the
at a point
Catholics
in
are still
time?
stuck in 1717.
Like, how the heck are we still at this point in time
1317.
we have this level of 1930s Germany running through our school systems?
Exactly.
And again, most people don't know that. And like, well, I talk to people about that story, and they're like, "Yeah, it's not true." And then it's like, "No, here's the law."
Right.
And so most people who support this idea of keeping a religiously segregated system don't realize the system they're supporting. And what's really heartening is, as I talk to people, even people who started off supporting the idea of keeping these segregated school systems, when they hear what it actually means, they go, "Oh," and it really starts the wheels turning. I've had the opposite. I had a fairly lengthy conversation with someone who interestingly probably hates Brad Wall as much as you do, but also hates us almost as much as she hates Brad Wall. And she was like, no matter what, I'm going to support the idea of this religious school system. And what was interesting, I talked to her about this, and she said, it doesn't matter to me. My kid getting this type of education that I want them to
They do get a better quality
is
of
more
education.
important to me than all of this other stuff.
Sorry, why is the Catholic school better education?
Some people, a couple of reasons why people think it is, and I think that is a assertion that is made without challenge a lot.
Yes. I'm challenged in that shit
Yeah.
right now.
On average, they do have lower class size.
Smaller classes.
On average, they have lower class size.
They have fewer kids.
They have more. They have a greater teacher to student ratio.
Yeah.
So essentially,
Makes
they get
a big difference.
They're
Huge.
a lot of the schools are newer. Like they have more money effectively. So it is better funded than the public system per kid.
So they are unfairly advantaged.
Yes.
Okay, well that's
So what can
a
we do
systemic problem.
as
Agreed. And I'd rather, and the one person who I spoke to who was probably one of the biggest turnarounds, and they've actually now joined the administrative organizing board. They started off like, I don't really agree with this. I went to a Catholic school system. I myself am a devout Christian. This is really important to me. And we talked, and by the end of it, they're like, oh, I guess this isn't. And they what their realization was is they had an amazing experience in school. Yeah. They basically said their ability to go to a Catholic school in a lot of ways saved their life. The smaller class sizes, the better rapport with teachers, all of these other things. The fact that they had the extra resources to help them literally saved their life when they were younger. But what they had the realization, their aha moment was, oh, I guess it's not really great that only some people get that.
Right.
Yeah.
That idea that, yeah, it was great that I had that, but why should only people of my faith get that? And that was the aha moment of them saying, being a Christian means treating my fellow citizen. I treat my neighbor as myself. I want my neighbor to have the same benefits I want my own children to have.
That's another argument. The whole idea of a Catholic system is the antithesis of the ideals of Christianity.
So, it was a really powerful moment as well. I've been really lucky to have lots of these conversations with people over the last few weeks.
That is fantastic.
And so this person sort of did the how can I help?
Yeah.
And it was
so
great.
how can people help?
Yeah.
So right now we're still in the very much the grassroots phase of things. Best thing people can do right now is search for One System Sask. They can find us on Facebook. They can find our own webpage, just onesystemsask.ca.
Okay.
If you search .com, it'll route you there as well. There's a change.org petition you can sign. That's a quick, easy click. You can find out our email address. So if you send us an email and say, hey, can you keep me updated, we'll do that. Like the Facebook page, follow stories, get involved in social media. This is going to be something that happens through public pressure.
Call your MLA and demand to talk to them. They have to talk to you.
One of the biggest hurdles of this is, and this is, we're getting into polling and politics and things like that. There was polling done in Ontario on people supporting their system, because they have the same system we do. Ontario, Alberta, and Saskatchewan are the only three provinces left. Everyone else has either never had it or got rid of it.
Yeah.
They've done polling in Ontario. The support for a unified school system, depending on the year, depending on the phrasing of the question, ranges from 55 to 79% in favor of a unified system.
So it's never below 50%.
It's never below 50%.
If you carry the three.
Typically, it works out to, in Ontario, it works out to about 70%.
Wow.
Alberta also, if you do a poll of everyone, if you do a random sampling and poll the province, consistently in favor of secular unified school systems. Yeah. In Saskatchewan, there's just not the polling. We're too small to often have big polling companies come in and ask those types of detailed questions.
But the real question would be, what percentage of Sask party supporters would vote? You know what I mean? And I bet you it would be more than 50. You know what I mean?
But what's interesting is taking that let's use 70-30 as sort of an average marker.
Yeah.
What you see in the Ontario situation is the 70% that support a unified system aren't going to become a single issue voter on it. That is not going to influence their decision on election day. So if you ask them in a poll, what would you prefer? They're going to say, I prefer a unified school system.
It's not a main topic.
They're not going to change who they vote for the most part. There's probably a small percentage of them who would. But the 30% who support the segregated system, most of them, even if not all, a large portion. So that's what you see happening in Ontario, is every time this idea comes up, and this idea gets floated in Ontario every few years for the last 40 years of unifying school systems. But what happens is millions of dollars get spent by the Catholic school system. So yay, taxpayer money is advertising to taxpayers. But tons and tons of money gets funneled into a huge push to get the voices out, so everyone who wants to keep their special privileges phones in, makes a big stink, and says, I will punish you on election day.
Right.
How Newfoundland got around that, because the Newfoundland had the same problem we did, how Newfoundland got around that was they said, okay, let's do a referendum.
That's what we should do.
So they did a referendum, and surprise, surprise, 70% of the province wanted to.
Wow.
The way Quebec got around it is the political parties got together and said this is the right thing to do, and it was passed through the National Assembly unanimously. So when Quebec exempted themselves from Section 93. And that's the legislation to do this is literally one sentence long.
Yeah.
It was the shortest bill ever. Like I read the bill that Newfoundland used, and it literally was the province of Newfoundland exempts itself from parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Section 93 of the blah, blah, blah. It was it was a one sentence long bill. And then the federal parliament rubber stamps it because it has to have enabling legislation from the feds because it's constitutional.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need 2/3. It doesn't need a Senate. It's literally the
Just a
province can do
simple
it
bill
if they
that has
want
to
it.
pass. That's it.
So Newfoundland, the way they got around the political landmine was doing a referendum. The way Quebec got around the political landmine was making it unanimous,
which will never happen here.
Which won't happen
Yeah,
here.
it seems like the Newfoundland model would probably work best. We're kind of more scalable with them. Like they're more.
And like we run on the fact that the NDP have been they are saying different talking points, but this isn't, again, it's not a partisan issue. The NDP are throwing up a lot of objections in the same way the Sask Party are, and they do it for different reasons. But that 30% that wants this system, I don't think are all Sask Party supporters. I think they go across party lines because you have left leaning Catholics as well.
Definitely.
But you don't want to let go of your base.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stephen Colbert.
So what is the NDP's position on this?
The NDP they basically came out and said they kind of wishy-washed on this specific issue of unifying. They said they want the appeal to go through. They said the notwithstanding clause is premature. But they did come out and basically say Carla Blakely came out and said that she supported, and she's the education critic, so she came out and said she supported the idea of letting the court case be appealed, and hopefully it's appealed, and then we get to go back to the magical status quo of a couple months ago. The appeal will lose. And this isn't me wishful thinking. The law is super clear. So unless you have a judge that really, really decides to ignore the Constitution, ignore the law is super, super clear. Right. So now that it's been ruled on, a judge is going to have to be conservatives talk and rail against activist judges all the time, or judges legislating from the bench. You'd have to have a pretty severe legislating from the bench for an appeal to be successful, because it's not as if this is some gray area. For sure. It's not like there aren't conservative judges or religious judges who decide to put their religious views ahead of the law. Right. But that's rare in Canada. That doesn't typically happen as much. And I think you would find difficulty in the legal precedent that sets. And if it does, quite frankly, even if that appeal does be successful, it's not like this issue goes away. Right. It's not like you still don't have Catholic schools fighting against having gay-straight alliances. It's not like you don't still have teachers who are not Catholic having to hide their religious views. It's not like you don't have, someone who teaches at the before and after school program having to hide the fact that they're living with their boyfriend that they're not married to,
or an economically less efficient and wasteful system.
Yeah, it's not like if an appeal is successful, we couldn't find better use for that $120 million. I can
give
think
it to cancer patients.
I don't think Brad Wall could find a better use for the money.
He'll just burn it.
Yeah.
Well, I think he has a friend who wants to build a road somewhere.
Need some land.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much, Dave, for coming in and talking about this with us.
Thanks.
You get Twitter. Do you have? You don't have Twitter?
I don't have the Twitter.
You gotta.
I'm less of a twit.
Get on the Twitter. Facebook. Are you a tweeter?
We got to get the Twitters all over the place.
I deleted Facebook from my phone.
You can just our regular website. Even if you're not on Facebook, just. Yeah, go to the website at onesask.ca. I think you're on there right now.
I'm on there right now.
Fantastic.
Call your MLA and write letters to the media.
Absolutely.
Write letters to Global. Write letters to
anybody. Everybody.
Okay.
All right. We're going to go to a music break. For live listeners and patrons, you can enjoy the next few minutes, and then we'll be back. For regular feed subscribers, this is where we'll end the Skeptic Studio. And this is where I'll insert the outro content. This week's music is Coming Home by City and Color, the acoustic version of Haunt Me by Wednesday 13, and Here's to Us by Hailstorm. All right. Patreon. We don't have any more Patreon support. We actually were short a little bit last month.
One of our supporters,
I'm sorry,
turned off his support like a douche. It was Gumby.
I didn't want to actually call him out on it. I wasn't sure if you were broke or if it was a mistake. But
no, I ordered a new bank card and the expiry date's different on it.
I didn't want to shame you for being broke.
You should have your money back now.
It's too late.
You should have your money now.
It's too late.
So we have one Patreon.
So no new Patreons.
Oh, no new ones. Okay.
Yeah.
Gumby bankers.
I just want to emphasize that this show is entirely funded by me, and all these wonderful people that I sit with all the time are volunteering their time. So any money that you can give us to help the show is greatly appreciated. And you'll never be charged more than $3 a month. And that gets you access to tons of patron-only content. Yeah, well, if you only did $1 an episode, it would never be more than $3 a month.
Oh, yeah, no. It might only be $1.
Well, it would usually be $2.
Okay.
But it would never be more than $3.
Not like back in the day.
No, that's
we
right.
We should probably release an episode.
So there is, like I say, there's tons of Patreon exclusive content, including the full-length ad-free episodes, which have the music that we play during the break in them. There's exclusive monthly content for $5 patrons. There's 30 minutes we record after the live broadcast. And now my other show, Hardcore Skeptic Examines, is being posted there early before it releases to the public. So you can access all of that and more by becoming a patron at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast. No new iTunes reviews. Will sent us an email.
Yay! Woohoo!
Not Will from Calgary, Will from down in the States. He says he finally got around to listening to some of the back episodes on Patreon, and because he's our top patron, he has access to all the $5 and up content. And
Is he the guy that's giving us $300 an episode?
There's nobody like that.
You, listener, could be that person.
Stop
You
derailing.
could
We
be
only have
that
7
person.
minutes.
Okay. So he was binging on some of the Patreon content from the oversharing with Justin Bender from Third Ion. Lisa is great. Yay. I loved the sidetracked on old man genitals. It was scientific, gross, and funny. I'm sorry you lost a patron. The music was great. And the bumper for religious nuttery makes him mad as well.
Oh.
Maybe that's why we're losing people.
He said he used to hear and believe that crazy shit.
Me too.
And we have an above average number of listeners named Will.
That's awesome.
How many do we have and what's the average?
Well, I don't know what the average is.
So how do you know it's above that?
But the only ones that ever contact us are named Will. So I assume
when you have to clarify which one.
That's right. When you actually have to clarify. As someone in America, your jokes about America debating the definition of the word fact were brutal.
But true.
Oh.
He says, I'm trying to fight and not bury my hand in the sand, but sometimes it feels like an impossible task. And I understand that. We all feel that, I think, quite constantly.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
He says, I don't even have a U.S. rep until June, and there's a 50-50 shot my rep will be a whack job, racist, religious fanatic. So how do you fight when a large part of society is against you? That's why activists in Texas are so impressive. It's worse there, and somehow they are able to fight this system. On the $5 patron content we had, I put out a story about how I need an outlet and some of my progress in looking through that for that. And he said he also needs an outlet, but so far blogs, videos, and podcasts don't work for him. And one of the reasons, and he supports conferences and activism, and one of the reasons that he supports this show is because we did a conference. And I hope that we can continue doing that. I got so much on the go right now, and it's very tough for me to be. I'm not a manager. I'm a doer. So what we need is a new manager, somebody who can take over and actually manage this.
Oh.
And everybody's looking at Angela.
That's funny. It's funny how that works.
Because some people are better managers.
Dave's volunteering.
You're our leader, Angela, sort of.
Okay. So, and then part of that $5 Patreon content, there was also one of my social justice interviews with Edwin Hodge from Victoria, a PhD candidate from Victoria. And he said this was a very detailed interview, but he didn't want to comment until he listened through it again and thought that it was a good one. All right. Plug your stuff. Quick.
Nothing.
Nothing
Right
Nothing
now,
yet.
no. Still working on it.
Anybody?
No plugs.
No plugs?
Possible voice acting job.
Nice.
Sweet.
I don't
Perfect.
know, paid or not.
Either way.
Well, you've got a
Fucking
great
cool.
voice. They're lucky.
Dave, anything new?
Thanks for the plug,
New
Corey.
movie coming out next month.
What movie?
Named Talent.
Okay.
Oh, yes, Talent.
I wrote the whole music.
I'm so excited about that.
It's going to be cool.
Oh, it's going to be cool.
That's
And
it.
I'm going to hire Dave to do the intro music for my podcast.
And of course, I've got the Hardcore Skeptic Examines. It's all over the place. Skeptic.
Sweet.
And let's do some outro music quickly.
Bye.
That's the end of the episode. Thanks for listening. Check out show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com and our website, brainstormblog.net. I'm still behind and I'm looking for some help to get caught up. Get in touch with me on Facebook, Twitter, or through the website, and we can negotiate a pay, and I'll fill you in on what I'm looking for. I already mentioned the tons of patron exclusive content, so if you want to become a patron, you can join the ranks of Will, Lisa, Rob, Aaron, Nathan, Daryl, Marissa, Janet, and Stephanie. Make sure to join us every second week when we broadcast live on Spreaker.com/user/brainstorm-podcast. Our next guest is Christine Shelska, PhD candidate at the University of Calgary, former president of Atheist Alliance International, and co-host on the Legion of Reason Diversion podcast. I suspect we may end up talking about blasphemy laws again. Thanks to Dr. Amy Tuteur and David Richards for joining us this time around. You can find out more about Dr. Tuteur by going to theskepticalob.com. And you can find out more about One System Sask by going to onesystemsask.ca. Those links will be in the show notes at thebrainstormpodcast.com and eventually on our main website. Thanks, Dave, for our intro music. Thanks to Alex Kapper-Murdoch for doing the voiceover for the intro and some of our ads. And thanks to Jason Camo for our outro music. You can find his stuff at aloststateofmind.com. All music is played either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info on our website. You can get your cool Brainstorm gear at cafepress.ca/brainstormpodcastgear. If you have a cool shirt or hat, take a pic and send it our way. Thanks again for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Corey, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors. We just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listens to us, shares the show, gives us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or supports us through Patreon and Gumroad. We don't have a lot of interaction sometimes with our listeners, but what we have had proves that we attract some of the best people around. Smart, kind, and cool. An audience truly worthy of the titles hardcore and woo-free. Thanks for helping us make the world a smarter place.